Well, welcome everyone to the Humanities Institute at Stony Brook. I am Perez Melgoza, the director of the Institute. And today we have our capstone event for a semester that has been full of great talks, great reading groups, research groups, and many activities at the Institute. The title of today's talk actually reflects two of the aspects of our work at the Institute. We have been working on a topic that we call healing, resiliency in the humanities and arts, in the arts and humanities. And today's title is Pandemic Narratives for Our Time, Personal Stories of Healing, Vulnerability, and Resiliency. A group has emerged out of these talks that calls itself Pandemic Narratives, which is one of the most active research groups on campus right now. And we have connected with them in this event as our students tell the stories of writing throughout the pandemic. The second part of the title, Personal Stories of Healing, Vulnerability, and Resiliency, connects directly with the work of Herstory. 4 years ago, Erika Duncan, the artistic director of Herstory, approached me on campus to see if we could establish some kind of partnership between the Humanities Institute and Herstory to bring her wonderful methods of writing memoir for political change to campus. Since then, our collaboration has grown in many different directions, and today's event is really a sample of the work that has been achieved through that collaboration. Let me introduce you, Erika, if you don't know her. So, and even if you know her, you might be surprised. So Herstory is founder and artistic director, novelist, and essayist. Erika Duncan has devoted her life to giving voice to stories that have been silenced and unsung. Her novels and portraits of writers, artists, and pathfinders in the humanities and science all touch on that moment that a spark was discovered, and they started to realize they could use writing to change the world. These stories were featured in the front page of Encounters, a series of New York Times Long Island Weekly, which appeared over the period of 4 years on a monthly basis. Over the last 25 years, Erika has built in a community of writers. The name Herstory points out the will to include in this group voices from all human groups, especially those whose voices have been silenced or we get to listen to less frequently. From women and minorities to immigrant, incarcerated people to people from all walks of life, including our students at Stony Brook. Perhaps there is no greater way to learn than to listen to other people's stories, to listen to the way they face the challenges of life and also the joys of their experiences. Today, we're going to have a sample of that, as Erika Duncan has prepared an exciting selection of student writers and will also give us a taste of what a Herstory workshop is like. So please join me in welcoming Erika Duncan, who will basically coordinate the rest of the event. Thank you very much, Erika, and welcome. And the warmest welcome to the Institute.
Yeah, thank you so much, Adrian. And I can't begin to tell all of you what an amazing experience it has been in these 4 years to be working with Adrian, to be working with Susan Jekyll, and really finding soulmates and partners in this mission of bringing campus and community together and really finding the stories that need to be told and making them then available for study, for action. And so I want to dedicate this program to Amy Hagedorn, who was very, very much our mentor since 1999, and to announce officially, probably for the first time out loud, that the Training Institute, which started at Hofstra and then found a permanent home here at Stony Brook, is now going to be named the Amy Mael Hagedorn Training Institute forever. And that gives me great joy. We are very lucky today to have 3 of the 6 fellows, the Stony Brook Humanities Fellows, who began our fellowship program, are here with us today as readers of their own pandemic narratives. So I'm going to introduce them one by one. Janelle Gannon came the second year. She actually came the pandemic year, a couple of months after that training cohort began. We were suddenly working remotely. And as you will hear from Janelle's piece, for her as our now current coordinator of our disabilities program, the people with disabilities have always known so many of the things that the rest of us only learned very gradually or quite suddenly during the pandemic. So Janelle, read to us.
Thank you, Erika. There is this persisting image in our popular culture, a woman, her hair long and loose, lying in a bed in an attic in a white dressing gown. Maybe she is resting or listless. Maybe she is chained to the bed. Maybe the chains aren't physical. Maybe she paces the rough wooden floor of the attic or peers out the small window overlooking the garden. Maybe she jiggles the locked door of her attic prison. Maybe she wants to escape confinement, but maybe she doesn't. Maybe she is too far gone to want anything at all. I can hardly go a week without coming across one of these images in the media, but I don't know if these women ever existed in the way our popular culture imagines them. I know sick women, mad women, were hidden away in attics, but I don't think they existed in this half-life way. This modern image of the bedbound woman has been co-opted from feminist literature written by homebound women to an outsider's perspective that erases our rich internal lives. The modern pop culture image of the bedbound woman erases us, disables us further. So let me tell you, here is what my attic room looks like. I have made it my war room. Here, I fight for my life. The walls, a warm orange, the color of the first light that peeks over the horizon at dawn. The ceiling, a textured popcorn white. Instead of looking out my window at a garden I cannot tend, I have brought my garden indoors. My plants line the windowsills. I wake to the shadows of leaves cast across my legs in the morning light. I think that waking up in warm sunlight is one of the greatest joys in life. Throughout the day, I sit under trailing vines that curtain my windows. I fall asleep to the smell of jasmine blossoms. When they bloom, their perfume fills the whole house. Above my bed is a bookshelf my father built for my 7th birthday, a secret message carved underneath the bottom shelf, so I can read it before I sleep. On this shelf are my favorite books, the ones nearest and dearest to my heart, the ones that taught me how to live, how to love, the ones I can't bear to have out of reach, these extensions of my mind. There are books and folders full of disability justice dreams, teaching us to imagine a world where all are valued and loved. Writings by brilliant people like Patty Byrne, Mia Mingus, Stacey Milburn, and Leah Lakshmi Piepzna Samarasinghe, whose work taught me to believe that my value is in my existence, in my survival, not in my conformity to able people's standards, whose work taught me the value of moving at my own pace when my dislocating joints never could keep up with other people, whose work taught me that community is everything, that we are all interdependent, and that we have always been enough. On the other shelf, there's a first edition of A Room of One's Own, printed on Virginia Woolf's own press, that convinced me of the importance of my own words. There's a too large collection of the poetry of Sylvia Plath, as I try to figure out how she survived a suicide attempt, as a student at the same college where I too survived my own mind when the school was always against people like us. To wake up to these books' gilded spines is to wake up every morning in sunshine. After all, what is a command center without its maps? And where these maps have led me is this: a computer screen filled with the beautiful faces of disabled writers, disabled dreamers, coming together to write our stories. In our workshops, we make intimacy through the computer screen. It feels like we are all in one of our homes together, surrounded by pillows and tea and wandering cats, talking about our lives. These tiny squares of the Zoom screen open up into our worlds, our rooms spangled with twinkling string lights and lush houseplants, and our favorite artwork and photos of loved ones on the walls. We arrange ourselves for comfort, some of us lying on our stomachs on our beds, swinging our feet in the air behind us, others cross-legged on the floor, some at desks, shifting as our bodies call for it in a way that classrooms never let us. For disabled people, adapting and making things work is a way of life. Long before the pandemic, we knew about working from home, about wearing masks to protect the vulnerable, about dealing with burnout and isolation and scarce resources. In this past year, as the world grapples with the pandemic, with a mass disabling event, some able people have finally begun to listen to us, the experts in long distance living, in making isolation work, in how to survive when the world can be so very hostile to our existence. And we make it work, we do. When the muscles in my back are spasming too much for me to sit up, I lie in bed, keyboard on my lap, and write with a projector pointed to the ceiling, the words so big as they should be to match their meaning. I learned this sort of projected on the ceiling creativity from those who came before me, and we pass it on in our workshops, in our stories, finding ways to survive, finding ways to live our brilliant, beautiful lives in a world that doesn't make it easy for us. On this little glowing Zoom screen, I see us, wheelchair and cane users, blind and hard of hearing, neurodivergent and mentally ill and mad and traumatized. Those of us who spend part of our lives in bed because of chronic pain, and those of us recovering from traumatic brain injuries, relearning to walk and talk, along with dozens of other disabilities that come down to our bodies and minds being a little different. I see us building movements, fighting injustices. We're writers and teachers and parents and retired nurses and students studying to be social workers and psychologists and librarians and city planners who are going to rebuild the world more accessible. I see us dancing, writing, finding ways to make it work. I see us passionate, dedicated, creative, curious, empathetic, and above all else, resilient.
Well, Janelle, that's many times as I've heard this. It just every time just gets deeply, deeply into our hearts and so important, so, and it felt like the right piece to lead this program and this entry into the Pandemic Narrative Project. So our next reader will be a fellow who came the first year of the fellowship program in 2019, Belinda Blanco, who is just an amazing writer, an amazing kind of a soul of, and Belinda had been writing all these amazing, very, very short, poignant pieces. And all of a sudden, as part of her work on the Environmental Justice Project, began what's a building series of kind of short, beautiful vignettes. And we have chosen her water piece, which is kind of midway through the series as the beginning. But the whole piece begins with the young person saying to Belinda as the adult, you've ruined this world. Why should we even dream? So this is Belinda's pandemic selection.
Thank you. Water. I looked down and I saw blue. I felt warm liquid covering my feet. I looked up. I felt water on my face. It was raining up. I was surrounded by water. I was water, but I was thirsty. The water was going away from the ocean on which I stood, running back to the sky, and then I woke up. Is that the reason you're sweating like crazy? He asked. I'm sweating like crazy because, who knows, I might have a fever. I respond. Fevers make you sweat, right? Let me take your temperature, he said. It's not that you were sleepwalking, more like a sleep running. I feel so tired. I'll be back, he says. In the dark, he gets up, opens the door, and walks slowly, quietly towards the kitchen. He doesn't want to kick my kitty that does his rounds around the house when it's dark. On top of the refrigerator, open 24/7, our personal drugstore lays, full of forgotten sicknesses, tokens, waiting. He is back now, and the kitty follows. Get Pedrito out. I don't want to get him sick. My body aches. Here, drink this, he said. 2 little pink pills and water. I feel them slide down my throat, and it hurts. I feel sick. I am sick. Why am I sick? I'm vaccinated. 101.2. It's not that bad, he tells me. Not that bad. They won't let me work if I have a fever. Take the test tomorrow. We'll see. See what? I'm vaccinated. I wear a mask. Why are you mad? He asks. Because I'm afraid, I say. So he left to work this morning, but I had to stay. The water runs, fills up my tub. I want it hot. I did not notice before. This water doesn't look like the one I dreamed of last night. It looks yellow. It doesn't matter. I can ignore that. My unicorn bubbles are going to turn the water purple anyway. I just won't think about it. But I do. I think about the yellow water in the tub, about the water from my dreams, running up to the sky, about the water I sweat when I'm sick, the water I cry when I'm sad or happy, the water I drink every day, all the water we waste. And then I notice the I have disappeared. It got replaced by the we. I used the water, but we wasted. I guess it is easier to share the blame than sharing the responsibility. I am doing what I am supposed to do to take care of myself, and I still got sick. The water, I cannot control her path. I cannot control her color. Can I? Last month, I stopped watering my tomatoes and they died. I can ignore. Nature cannot. Thank you for listening.
Oh, Belinda, wow. Yeah, it's, again, so beautiful and so deep. And I mean, to combine the urgency with just the reflectiveness and the beauty is just, you always do it But again, and to look at the larger Herstory project, the larger pandemics narrative project is everybody has a pandemic story because we've all lived through it. But to really take these stories so deeply so that maybe people will wake up, maybe people will feel and, join in our common humanity. So our third fellow who's on the program today is Daniel Menzo, who also came on at the same time as Janelle, like a couple of months before the pandemic struck. And Daniel, again, the way that he has combined reflection and just storytelling and imagery is quite amazing. And I think this reflection touches on all of us who are trying to live, study, and love during the pandemic. Also want to say that Daniel has just added so much to our understanding of the pedagogy and why it works, why it doesn't work. So Daniel.
Thank you, Erika. I've been staring at the blank page on my computer screen for the past 20 minutes, at times pulling away and looking outside at the trees that have come into full bloom. I don't have any assignments due, not really. I finished my first year of grad school, so in a way I feel as though I should be celebrating. If anything, breathing in the feeling of relief, of easing into what some might call a well-deserved summer break. But even those words don't make sense anymore. Summer, break, well-deserved. I find no solace in these words, nor how they have been defined for years. On the one hand, I share the belief of those who argue that no one should feel as though they need to explain their rest, restfulness, idleness, tuning out, or just plain non-productivity. When I think along those lines, utopic fantasies fill my imagination, where we all have enough food, space, time, and support to live the kind of fulfilling lives we should all be able to live. Yet on the other hand, the hand that turns on the news, the hand that dials the phone to call home to my parents, that takes out another Lysol wipe to clean the doorknobs, light switches, faucets, the hand that types into Google the words Minneapolis, the one that was sowing green bean seeds the other day, the one that feels cramped now as I write this, the hand I lay across my side as I try to sleep at night. This hand lives in the here and now, where fantasies feel useless as much as they feel necessary. This hand is typing these words, yet I feel guilty about it, like it should be put to better use. Do you think we should be sleeping separately? I asked my partner several weeks ago now. I mean, just to be safe. Javier works in a nursing home, and at the time I asked this question, dozens of the residents there had already died because of COVID-19. It seems foolish to think how just a few days beforehand, I had asked him to simply wash his hands and face when he came home before giving him a kiss after his long day at work. And that now I was suggesting that we basically live as roommates for the time being. His reply, sure, whatever you want, if it would make you feel better, did not really help matters, although I'm sure he thought so. He's always been immensely supportive, and while I know such a reply falls in line with this kind of support, I think I would have preferred a different response, something like, yes, I agree, you are right, and I'm glad you are mentioning it. But am I right? Does it matter? Does any of this matter? While taking precautions during a global pandemic is surely a good idea, we live in a small one-bedroom apartment. So does having my partner sleep on the sofa for almost 2 months actually contain any potential contaminant he might accidentally bring home from his job? We still share the same bathroom, meals at the kitchen table. It's hard to tell if we're doing it right or wrong. Like most things recently, what first started out as a good idea has now been making no sense at all. There has been a strange evolution to our caution and concern throughout these past several weeks, for better or worse. At first, we tried to implement the 6 feet recommendation, even in our home. I thought, well, maybe I'll just stay in the bedroom and get work done, now that the space has doubled as my full-time office. But after a few hours of reading or grading, the feeling of isolation that can often attach itself to rigorous academic work started to sink in even deeper than normal. While taking breaks, I'd open the bedroom office door to chat with my partner, me standing against the door frame as he sat on the couch. Maybe my earlier descriptor of roommates doesn't quite convey the estranged feeling that filled our small apartment then. Even those relationships tend to share living spaces more closely. Yet as I glanced at my partner on the couch, mere footsteps away, I felt an empty gulf between us, like I would never reach him, even if I ran. After a few weeks like this, I couldn't take it anymore. So during one of my study breaks, I opened the door, quietly walked the few steps it took to get to the couch, and sat down. On the opposite end, of course, even though it was more like 4 feet apart instead of 6. Hi, I said to my partner of 8 years, although in a way it felt like we were just meeting for the first time. Hi, he said back. His growing smile made me realize how he must have felt about the whole thing, even though he kept his words to himself. I wanted to be closer to you, I said, his smile now reaching its fullness. That first shift, our co-occupation of the couch, while it made our dynamic and living conditions feel a little better, not so alienated from one another, in a way it actually reinforced the confusion I felt while listening to the news at the beginning of all of this. The constant and conflicting messages that first talked about how the virus had reached Seattle, and then as if overnight it turned into a global pandemic. Mask or no mask, how to evaluate your symptoms, who's most at risk, how to boost your immunity, and so on and so on. I started to feel like no matter how cautious we were, if he caught the virus at work, I would inevitably catch it too. So maybe watching a little TV together in the evenings was the safest way we could try to retain some sense of normalcy. Yet after spending an hour or so together on the sofa, I would get up and return to the bedroom office so that my partner could rearrange the pillows to transform the couch into his bed for the night, and the following night, and the night after that. Javier's initial response to my question of us sleeping separately also entailed his volunteering to sleep on the couch, even against my own willingness to do so, or my suggestion of how we could alternate. And while I was of course upset and sad in the beginning, after a few weeks like this, I was starting to feel incredible guilt over the whole arrangement. Why is he the one sleeping on the couch? He's the one that needs the good sleep. He's the one that leaves the house each day to go to work, to a building where people are dying by the dozens, where refrigerator trucks wait outside, receiving bodies like cargo. Not only does he need the restful sleep to ensure his good health, but he also deserves it, as if a reward to counteract the terrible things he sees and hears each day. But instead, when I see him on the couch, I feel as though I'm punishing him. Sure, I know he actually enjoys watching TV while falling asleep, something we disagreed on when we first moved in together. And of course, I feel even more guilty about the better quality of sleep I've been getting, not having my snoring partner next to me. How small both of these things feel now, though, in comparison to the sacrifice he makes while wearing his mask for 8 hours, or in comparison to everything else that's going on all around us. I eventually reached a similar threshold in trying to figure out how to make sense of the situation. I was trying to think of creative ways to compromise our safety, just enough so that we wouldn't slip into a different kind of new normal, one in which we would become accustomed to saying goodnight from across the room. Me standing in the doorway, trying not to cry as I looked at my partner curled up on the couch. I could tell Javier had also reached his own threshold, at first in his change of attitude, and then in a more surprising and provocative kind of way. While communication is key for maintaining healthy relationships, I suppose there is also something to be said about the way two people in love can be on the same page without even saying a word. In our case, Javier was able to be away from the nursing home for 2 days in a row, which meant we both separately started to think how this could temporarily free us from our own, I admit, perhaps absurd, self-quarantining procedures. But neither of us said anything. Instead, the night before he returned to work, as I was leaning against the door frame of the bedroom office, Javier walked by slowly and paused in front of me, much closer than 6, 4, or even 2 feet away. He was close enough to kiss me, and so he did, softly and quickly, almost as instantly as he pressed his lips against mine. He was already pulling them back. It was already over. And yet everything changed. A rush of emotion and confusion and hope quietly yet forcefully poured in, like watching a stampede on TV with the sound on mute. It felt like we were breaking the law, like sirens were going off, even though I also had been wondering how we could, just for that night, break through our self-imposed barriers we believed were keeping us safe. All I could actually think was, what just happened? It felt like our first kiss all over again. This stranger I'd been sharing the apartment with, who then became my housemate, he kissed me. He must have seen on my face how I was trying to process all this inside, because he was already nodding as I started to ask, so maybe you could come sleep in the bedroom tonight? We both knew then, as much as we know now, that just because someone is away from exposure for 2 days does not mean they did not contract the virus the day before. Putting our faith in being safe that night made as much sense as putting your faith in anything, really. It's a guessing game. Although he now gets tested for COVID-19 twice a week, I would be lying if I said I was no longer concerned about his safety. And even though he doesn't really say so, I know he's thinking the same thing. Thank you.
Daniel, yeah. So again, I mean, just the depth, the delicacy of this exploration. And, you know, just like, it feels like it's just all there. So now what we're going to do is we're going to transition, as we promised, into telling you in the audience how we actually work in Herstory. And our signature way is really thinking about if your words had the power, whatever the theme, whatever the project, like what would you want them to say? What is this thing that you really want to change? And so at this point, as these pandemic narratives were gradually coming, some of the people who worked with us from the very, very start had to write about the pandemic, but many of the people just weren't ready, and only now are really becoming ready. And several times we actually did try to start groups earlier for first responders, and it really didn't feel like time. And at this moment, partially just in pulling things together to get ready for this program, we realized it was time. So looking at our working cohort of facilitators that is about 23 people, you know, who are working both locally and now nationally. First person who came to mind was Barbara Levin, who's been working with us, feels like forever, working in the jails, in the community, in the schools, but Barbara's also working as a COVID tracker. And so I've asked her to come share a page one moment, and then Ermencina Saliska, who is part of our training cohort, is in public health, got her degree in public health actually during the pandemic. So Barbara and Ermencina will be teaching our new workshop together. We'll be having a meet and greet, which we'll tell you more about at the end, but maybe Andrew just share the link in the chat. And the third person who will image her page one moment is our newest board member, Heather Passmore, whom we got to know through the Freedom Forum in Wyandanch. And she is going to be, as a new Herstory writer, she'll be helping to plan and coordinate and really create a movement of nurses aides, people who work in hospitals, students who were first responders, who were Instacart deliverers, who were cleaning people's houses, who were, working in fast food. So anyway, so Barbara, come just, and while she's talking, just all of you try to let your mind wander from these free readings to each new page one moment that will be shared. So at the end, if there's time, we'll begin to share from the audience after you meet a whole group of Stony Brook undergraduates who've been working with us, framing their new page one moment. So Barbara.
If I were to do a page one moment, based on the fact that I am a case investigator for COVID, and so I'm the first person that many people who find, after they find out they've got COVID, I'm the first person from the government that they get to speak to. So, hi, my name is Barbara. May I please speak to the guardian of Samantha Peters? Oh, hi, you're Samantha's mother? Okay, and your name is? Thank you, Mrs. Peters. I'm calling because, as you know, Samantha tested positive for COVID. I know she's not even one yet, I know. Don't cry, I know you're worried, but I promise you, you're strong. We can make it through this. Are you able to care for her? Are you able to keep her isolated from others? Do you have enough food and diapers and medicine for yourself and for Samantha? Is there anything that I can help you with? Is there anything else? Is there anything else? Okay, I'll have somebody get you diapers and I'll have somebody contact you to get you food. I will, and I'm gonna call you back tomorrow because I'm a mother hen. I keep in touch with my folks. Thank you for speaking with me, and stay safe and stay strong. And after that conversation, I hang up the phone and I cry. I cry because I know and I feel what that mother's feeling. And that would be my page one moment. And I would hope that you would want to hear more, because that's what a page one moment is. It's like an appetizer to the main dish. It's your start. So.
Yeah, so thank you, Barbara. And Barbara has led so many people in the civil rights group and many groups to just take their writing journey. So Heather, who's much newer to this, is now going to share her page one moment, and knowing that she's a public health nurse, so. Oh, you're on mute. Wait, you have to unmute yourself.
Sorry about that. You can hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. My page one moment. As I gathered my things to leave the office, I realized I did not have one of the forms I needed, so I quickly hurried back to retrieve it from my desk, and I got in my car and took off. Only a short drive until I'm pulling up to the driveway, and all I can see is a large, oversized blue and white sign posted on the lawn in between the flowers and the tulips as they burst up for fresh air for springtime, and glaring letters on the lawn spelling TRUMP. All this while, our visits were being done telephonically, but now the state had made changes to our visit requirements. This was now a mandated visit. I'm feeling nervous because the conversation on the phone was so anti what's going on about COVID and the pandemic. And the government is not allowing people to work, but giving handouts to these essential workers. I'm asking myself, will this client be compliant as I had required everyone on the visit to wear a mask throughout my visit? Will they assume that because I'm Black, I must be Democrat and agreeing with Biden? This visit's not going to go well for both of us. I'm thinking so much has gone on politically about the management of COVID, what this visit would mean now. So I decided, let me just keep this conversation about health and that I'm here to solve a problem. How hard can this be? So I gather my documents, proceed to the front door, and a tall gentleman with striking red hair and freckles greeted me at the door. And as I entered and got inside, he quickly excused himself and left with an older woman and the client inside. Yes, the older woman with whom I had the conversation with a few days ago when I scheduled the meeting. Surprisingly, as we greeted, she gathered herself and noticed that she didn't have her mask on. Am I to put a mask on Mother too? I softly nodded and verbally clarified, only if Mother will be in the same place during our visit. Her conversation quickly went on to address what would be done about getting the help she needed because of shortage of workers. She did not miss a beat picking up where she left off. What are we going to do about this problem? Because I need help. Can't you see my mother is very ill and I cannot stay home every day to take care of her? What this would mean would be a 2-hour visit with this daughter and client. I began to ask some strategic questions so I could help them come up with some solutions. And I hope they would begin to address how some of the health needs could be met at home. It was then that the daughter responded in a consoling tone as she turned to her mother.
Let's see, Heather. That's beautiful. I didn't realize you were actually going to begin to write it. And wow, this is exciting. But for today, and this gives you a touch, it was just the vision yesterday. For today, we're actually going to be sharing just the sort of images of it. So
okay, I'm just gonna cut to the part where the client is talking about her experience.
Just talk it, Heather.
I'm sorry.
Just talk.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Talk it quickly, because this is really just so people see the raw materials, and we want to leave time for everybody just to do it.
Okay, great.
Yeah,
will do.
Yeah.
So the issue was, so just continuing on, the client started talking to me about how she lost her friend, Betty and Carol. They were two closest friends, and they were attending a daycare program. And now all she had was no one. And I'm sitting there, and as I listened to her speaking to me about this, I started tearing up, but I couldn't let her see my tears. So I just quickly started to fidget and started doing something else, because I really didn't want her to feel as though I was becoming overwhelmed by the visit. So I swallowed hard and cleared my throat and tried to continue on with the visit. And this is one of the things that I recognized that was going to go on and on and on. And she wanted to know, what could I do? So I gave her some suggestions, and I told her, here's what you can do. Look at who you have in your resources, try to plan and see what could be done about who is there to help you. Her daughter looks at her, she says, look, maybe my sister-in-law, maybe my niece who's home from college, she can help. At that point, I recognized that they did have resources and they were just overwhelmed. And now they needed somebody to just focus in and help them to direct. That was one of the issues that we were trying to help them with. And hopefully this could come to an end.
It's so beautiful. And this just gives you a touch of the Herstory process, where in normal life, interrupting somebody is a horrible thing. But in this page one imaging together, we all we just want the stories to slow way each moment to be sort of expanded and cherished. And right now we're giving you just a beautiful collage of everyone. So Hermosina, just then, we're going to do these very fast so that we can really just evoke all these kind of collage of page one moments. So Hermosina, just give us a kind of quick collage of where yours will begin, and then we'll transition into working with the Stony Brook students as they begin to imagine it.
I can do like a really quick first draft of my page one moment. It's very short.
Don't read it.
Okay, okay, fine.
And it's interesting, everybody, the Stony Brook students too, they begged us, could we read? And for this, we really want to help fire the imaginations of the people. And believe it or not, we had a dress rehearsal where everybody was imaging aloud. And then the fellows have been telling us, their students are all saying, please let me read, don't let me do this. Anyway, so Emma, just image it.
So during the pandemic, I ended up working in a group home, mainly because I wanted to be of help and I wanted to be outside. I've been cooped up for many months by then. I was doing my master's and I was having cabin fever. So I went to this job, and one of the places that I was at, when you go in, there was this wall that has all of the residents out and about, with each other, with family members. And I started to use that wall to remember people's names. However, I noticed that half or like a few of the people on the wall I didn't know. And when I asked about it, I found out it was because of the pandemic, I think about half of the residents unfortunately passed away. So I guess my page moment would be to like going through the process of like trying to remember, this is so-and-so and he's in that room. This is so-and-so and this is in that room. I don't know that person. I don't know that person. I'm not sure if that makes sense, but that's how I was going to start my moment.
So
that was wonderful.
Yeah. And this is really a moment where we're all just planting the seeds. So each semester, it started with 7 Stony Brook interns when we first started in 2018. Each semester, we have between 30 and 40 interns doing our online workshops, which did start as a result of the pandemic. So Daenerys has been writing with us in a number of the online workshops. And for this particular event, we asked her to really, again, start from scratch. Don't read anything you've already written or that you wrote at the last minute last night, and just talk your page one moment. And as she's doing it, audience members should be thinking, and thinking quick, not talking a lot. Just how are you going to just hook this stranger reader in a minute or two? You know, where would this stranger reader find you? So Daenerys.
Yes, hello everyone. So starting from scratch and thinking about the kinds of stories I want to tell as a student in times like these, I think I would think back to a moment where I am walking into a building, being scared and feeling irritable and disgusted by the doorknobs I touch and the chairs that I sit in as I wait and prepare myself mentally with my mother inside of an office that we usually be filled, but with other individuals waiting in line. But in that particular moment in time, it was empty, and it was just my mother and I waiting to fill out immigration paperwork. and sort of preparing myself for the kinds of questions that they will be asking me, the kinds of difficult questions, and almost ridiculous questions to be asking such a young 19-year-old who is first year in college and has good intentions for their future and themselves and the community surrounding them.
Yes, and so you see that this again takes us beyond her personal story. It takes her into what's happening to immigrants in the middle of all this, and if when Daenerys actually writes this, she'll be taking you even further into this sort of unsafe building where, you know, she doesn't know if she's going to be infected. She doesn't know if she's going to be infected if she has to go home. She doesn't know if she'll be able to continue her studies. So these are just, again, seeds. So Nicholas is also a Stony Brook student. He's a senior and just graduating. So he found this internship at the last minute before leaving Stony Brook. So Nick.
Thank you. One of the things for the page one moment that I've been picturing and really keeping in mind has been how we often think of the pandemic in terms of society on like a large scale and how people interact, but we don't often think of that in terms of like a human environment. And I would want to make the reader envision the place of their life, the place where their life that takes place is very similar to any given natural environment. And how the pandemic has imposed upon our human environment this silence, this fear, this great anxiety that I think was more palpable and you felt it more and you could see it more early on during the pandemic when news was coming out and people were afraid, and how that fear gripped everybody's lives. And if you were to go and look at someplace like Main Street in your own town, perhaps, you'd see how silent it was, how quiet it was. And it echoes the feelings that people try to get at when we talk about the damage being done to the natural.
So I'm actually going to dare you. Yesterday, you were just counting on the images and without the sort of intellectual undertone. So I'm going to dare you to quickly retell. One of the things we're finding with the students is they've been such good students that they're connecting the dots. And we're making great literature. And yesterday, you were just in that moment.
Gotcha.
So just jump right in, be in that moment.
Okay.
So we sort of take two, be there.
Gotcha. Picture just going onto Main Street in my small town and seeing how the place that I'd watched so many people that I know live their lives and carry out their business and do what they have to do, and seeing it empty and seeing it quiet and seeing it as this place where people once were, but it's become utterly paralyzed and empty, is haunting. It's like seeing any ghost town. And that would be the visual that I would want people to see, is the emptiness where once people lived.
So, and beautiful, and just to share, yesterday Nick also had just this image of people walking very far from each other and not looking. And then, you know, you really played with the faces. So part of the work that we're doing and have been doing for 25 years is you can talk about something, but until you can help somebody to walk in your shoes, you're not really going to touch the heart and soul of it. And in order to understand life, of course, we connect the pieces. In order to bring people in, like the pieces are all over the place. So I think the order here has changed. Erin, I haven't met you, so it's going to be a totally new experience to get your page one moment. Erin is also a Stony Brook student.
Hi, how are you? If I thinking about this difficult time, I definitely correlate it to my mental health. I also transferred during COVID, which was a difficult thing to do. So I guess I would begin it with being at my community college. I remember in the middle of class, someone just erupting in saying, we're evacuating, and going into the parking lot and the confused faces and just total chaos in the parking lot. No one knew what was going on, and hearing the conversations going around me, flustered, and thinking about what is going on, thinking about my job, if I was going to continue to have this routine that I was very independent, going to community college, going to school every day. So the total disruption of that, of being, quarantined. And yeah, I would definitely start with the beginning and process of how it did affect me and how I needed that structure and how so many other people depend on that structure and how it totally was lost during this.
Okay, and and this sounds like something that will touch many people. And again, if Erin is writing it, we would sort of dare her not to be necessarily naming mental health or naming, and just let people really, really into that moment in the campus. But this is the way we'll sort of just bring people together and from all walks of life. So Melissa is next, also a Stony Brook student. And again, it's going to be brand new for me. So Melissa.
Hello. Yeah, obviously, I think that my page one moment would be very similar in the concept of what Erin had said about mental health. It definitely did take a toll on my mental health. The thing that I would want people to picture is kind of just me sitting in front of my computer screen on Zoom with my friends, and friends who live, down the block, friends who live a few blocks away, friends who live states away, but that being my only way to communicate with them, whereas in the past I could just give them a quick call and they would be in my living room. But this time I'm staring at them through a computer screen, and it was like that for almost a year until, things started opening up, the weather started getting nicer and we could sit outside. And it definitely took a toll on my mental health because it's hard to, these people that you see every day, these people that you interact with, get to hug every day, suddenly you can't even touch them.
Yeah, so thank you again. These are just to have the student stories of the pandemic, the young people's stories, and think of the collective mental health. Carla came to read the very first day we actually had an event at Stony Brook, and I think it was Carla's reading of a story that she had written in Patchogue, Medford High School, that actually helped convince Adrienne and Susan that this whole project was worth maybe exploring. And Carla has since written both in person and online with the Stony Brook students through the year until she graduated. And so we dared her to start a whole new pandemic narrative. So where would you do your page one? And again, not reading anything, but just quickly speaking what you think it would be. Let's see, I think you're on mute. Let's try it now. And no. Are any of the hosts able to unmute or what?
She's unmuted. I just don't think her mic is working.
Mm-hmm. She might have to connect her earbuds.
Yes.
So now you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, so I'm sorry about that. So I was talking about, I already have my, that I not graduated how I want to, but one of the page one moment that I like is when I in my work, I'm working and like everybody is like up waiting for an order, and then we say, hi, how can I help you? And one person start coughing and we like each other, we say, no, I don't want to take that money for that person. So you go. So we're fighting to take the money because we're scared about how is the person behind the window. So after we took the money, we had to run to wash our hands. So that's like, we know we are not like safe in any place because we gotta go to the home. We don't know what we touch or what we person we speak at.
Oh, that's a very, very powerful, and that would really work. And I hope all of you actually consider joining the new workshop that we're starting. Sydney Castiblanco has participated in almost every online workshop that we've done since the pandemic. He started writing at Stony Brook, first as a community member, and now as a returning non-traditional student, and works as an EMS worker and fireman. And so Sid, come on. And again, don't read us anything, but just quickly tell a new page one moment, or even just how the one with your father went.
Hi everyone, Sydney Castiblanco. So like Ms. Duncan said, I'm a first responder. I'm a paramedic and a volunteer fireman here in Long Island. And one thing that I wanted to write about it. I mean, I did write about my dad, about the pandemic. I lost my dad through COVID, and that was a really heartbreaking story. And I mean, it still affects me today. But now, since we've been almost 2 years or a year and a half after the pandemic, and we're still struggling with it, struggling with people that don't want to get vaccinated, including my own colleagues, like paramedics, EMTs, nurses, not so much the doctors, but some of the nurses. And we've seen this so much every single day.
So
deal with this
jump into an image. You're so good at this. Yeah, just don't tell us about it, just jump. And we're doing this fast so we get to everyone. Yeah, so.
Yeah, no, so I want to actually write about the misinformation that my colleagues have adopted.
What will the reader see?
I would like to write about the why and why not some of us don't actually believe in the vaccines. That's one of the main things I want to emphasize on it.
Okay, so what we'll do is, as we move to Jenny, and Sid's a wonderful writer, and he will do an image, but I didn't expect this quite, but this is just a wonderful also demo for everybody about how you can argue with a political position, but you can't argue with the story. And I think that the more that in the pandemic's narrative project, taking from the inside, the experience of a nurse, the experience of a nurse's aide, the experience of the EMS person, you know, it's just that's so deep. Jenny is a community member who wrote with the Stony Brook students again, and first was part of the workshop in Spanish, and then when that was temporarily suspended, wrote with the Environmental Justice Group, gave a beautiful presentation for the Freedom Forum. And so Jenny, though, once again, don't read anything you've already written. and come on, and if you were to just bring us there to a page one moment. So. And
hi, everybody.
Would
It's
you
me,
rather
right?
speak in Spanish or English? Because if you want to speak in Spanish, we can have someone translate.
Okay. I try to say something in English,
Okay.
but I sing in Spanish.
Okay.
Okay. And my moment is when I think my dad was COVID, and I think how the life, and he left me again, and I think why is possible he died, and no have time with him, and I want to become like a little girl when I saw him, and I want to see, but I don't can see him because everybody sick, everybody dying.
Yeah, so sing us the song from the Freedom Forum, and then we'll have a few minutes for people from the audience to talk.
Okay. The song is just the song is no puedo respirar, no puedo respirar, tus pensamientos me ahogan y tus motivos me matan. No puedo respirar, no puedo respirar, tus pensamientos me ahogan y tus motivos me matan.
Thank you. Yeah, and when Jenny sang that at the Freedom Forum, and it resounded through Wyandancham Plaza, and then the Greek chorus took it up in English after your beautiful piece. It was so extraordinary. So we're nearing the end, but we probably have a few minutes for a few volunteers from the audience who have, and again, just to speak images, speak in collages. So I will let Janelle and Daniel volunteer to just see who would like to speak. So.
Thank you. Betty, I see your hand is raised. Would you like to unmute yourself? Oh, I think I just muted you. I'm sorry. We'd love to hear your page one moment. Thank you, Betty.
Yeah, so there would be just probably short vignettes. To start, there would be me finding out my aunt died, me finding out I had breast cancer, and then me in the car driving home because my mother is dying of COVID. And my sisters and I on like a conference call. So their voices are coming through my car radio. And for 2 hours, my mother going through what she wants at her wake and funeral. And she dies as there's a sign on the road that says entering Bethlehem, because I was driving through Pennsylvania. So that, yeah, there's a lot. And then, so the day I get home, I'm on my way to the hospital and they announce it's the pandemic.
Wow. 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 So see, it just takes us here. It breaks your heart, but it also shows so much of the human spirit. So again, just to add to this one, call on someone else now.
I see, is it Tere? Your hand is up on Tere's iPhone?
Yes. So
Hi,
here's my page one moment. So I've been isolated in the house for almost 18 months. I'm talking to my girlfriend. I get up enough nerve to pick her up and take her to the food pantry so she can get groceries. And I explain to her ahead of time that she has to have a mask, a shield, rubber gloves, and spray herself with Lysol, sit in the back of the car. We go to the food pantry and I have the workers talk through the window on the passenger side. So as I'm driving her back to her house, she's mentioning that her grandson has been sick. Her 4-year-old grandson, who she cares for, is sick. And automatically I'm like, well, what's wrong with him, right? And she was like, oh, he has a sore throat. And she explains it. And I was like, I bet he got COVID, because he goes to, he's exposed to kids every day. So in a couple of days later, she calls me and she lets me know that the grandkid has COVID and that I might have been possibly exposed to COVID. And I am furious. So once I got over being angry, I started praying for her grandson and the little boy. A note came home from the school that one of his classmates had COVID, his playmate. And I got over being angry with her and prayed for her and the little boy to be healthy. And then I got angry again because while I isolated for 14 days over Thanksgiving, she went to the show and had her daughter take her to the grocery store. And I felt that they should have been in the house isolating. So everybody doesn't observe the rules the same.
It's interesting how both of your story and Betty's story brings the reader into a car, like almost in the beginning. So that's just something in our workshops, we do a lot of feedback and talking about where stories may start. And it's just interesting in both of these stories, the reader's already in the car kind of with you going somewhere. So I think that's really powerful. Yeah, thanks. And we'd love to hear from more. Kevin, thank you. Would you like to unmute yourself? Hey, Kevin.
Sure. Hey, y'all. I'm trying to think about how to quickly kind of communicate what's on my mind, but the stranger reader finds me in this landing area, this hallway that's between my parents' bedroom, my bedroom that I'm now sharing with my boyfriend, who I've lured to California to escape the pandemic, who's working on a crisis line for the Trevor Project, and my mother, who's working for Princess Cruises, with ships filled with people, the most number of cases that we are aware of, in the guest bedroom turned into a makeshift office. And my father, who was just diagnosed with cancer and forced into retirement downstairs, ignoring the news that is constantly blaring in the house as a permanent fixture. And I have just come in from trying in vain to find Lysol and hand sanitizer, wearing goggles I found in the garage, having just taken a shower, but there's nowhere to go to be alone. And so I'm talking about how I'm trying to ground myself and center myself to try to be present for everyone around me, when this time was supposed to be me being on my parents to focus on applying to jobs and focusing on myself. So I also have some imagery around fluid and water and blood and the moon, and how we talking about my own experiences navigating the HIV pandemic and growing up thinking and fearing blood and fluid, and then now and the bonding and pleasure and connection that comes with fluid, and then understanding the breath as something sacred as well, but also something that is full of and fraught with danger. So
you notice as you're listening that one can almost flip it, what Kevin just said, and flip to the moon and the fluid and the blood. And, I can't see the whole like group of however many people in the audience are here. But as he was beginning to talk about HIV and giving blood and all that, I noticed that people were nodding because it was kind of giving a bigger world and then sort of narrowing in on who of his family was there or not there. So I think we probably have time maybe for 2 more real short ones. Let's see if you see anybody raising their hands.
Madison raised her hand.
Okay. Okay, Madison.
Hi, so I've just thought of one that maybe could help me image. So this is a moment where I'm sitting in my classroom and I have my big coat draped around my shoulders because I've flung all of the windows open. And that's sort of my way to compromise the lunch rule where every student eats in the classroom and takes their mask off for lunch. I remember in the professional development, we asked, hey, can we keep our doors open to let the deadly virus out? And they said, no, you have to keep it closed for the school shooters. So there's a student and I see her approach me and I don't have my mask on because it's lunch. And as she comes up to my desk, I sort of do this quick decision-making where I go down 2 different conclusions. What would happen if I let this student come and sit next to me and we were to talk and she's closer than 6 feet? And I sort of think about all the statistics. And then I do this other conclusion because I know what's going on in her life right now. And she's talked about her abusive household and how she needs to come into my room and have sort of these talking sessions with me for her mental health. And so then I decide I'm just going to put my mask on and sit next to her. And I say, okay, put your mask on, sit down. Let's talk about it. And it's sort of trying to figure out which one is going to be best in the long run, because it's like a lesser of 2 evils at that point.
Yeah, so you notice a lot of these stories also have drama, because it's like we could all talk about how we feel about COVID or what we believe should be the solution, what we should believe should be done. But you notice that this kind of a story just leaves so much to think about, so much to ponder. And of course, we're wondering where she is. We're wondering, this doesn't sound like New York. It doesn't sound like even Long Island, but the reader will have time. So a final quick imaging. Call on just anyone you see.
I see, is it the
It's
Hi.
Daima.
Hi.
Hi. I just thought of a page on.
Oh, Emma got muted. Can we unmute her?
Hi. My name is Daima. You can call me Daima or Dai is fine. Page one moment I thought of is the day I found out my sister died. I was with her daughter, my niece, who's older than me. And we were in the city going to have a fun night out. And I get a phone call. Well, my niece gets the phone call because I didn't have a cell phone at the time. And I take it and it's my other sister telling me that our eldest sister passed away. And I'm like, you know, how do I tell my niece that her mom just died? And then how do I then tell the people we're with, we need to leave now and go to the hospital so we can be with our family because we only have a short amount of time to be with her before they take her to wherever they take deceased people in the hospital. So the page one moment would be the car ride from New York City to Stony Brook Hospital with this much older police officer, who's the person we were hanging with, my niece, who just lost her mom, and myself, and that awkward drive from Manhattan to Stony Brook Hospital at like midnight or something crazy.
Yeah, wow. So we've just gone on such a journey with everybody. and heartbreaking journey, but also it's very strong spirits, very strong connections. And I think Adriana is going to say a few closing words, but I want to invite all of you. We're organizing, it was Heather's idea. She's been contacting nurses she's working with, and that we will have, instead of a first workshop with the ongoing Pandemics Narrative Project, we're going to have a kind of online meet and greet from 7 to 9 next Tuesday. And then the following week, we went back and forth about whether we should have the project begin over the holidays or wait till January. Normally, we would take a holiday break, but there are definitely people for whom the holidays are hard in this time of pandemic. And so we've decided we will continue, like, starting the week after next with regular workshops, but we invite all of you. And again, please, Andrew, share the link while Adriana is closing this meeting.
Well, thank you, Erika, and thank you, everyone. It's been wonderful. I think all of us that have been here today have learned a lot. There is so much that a story can tell, and you can spend days reading newspapers and listening to the news, and I think we learned so much more today by the wealth of perspectives and approaches and experiences that you have shared. It really is amazing, and amazing the work that you do. I think that everybody would love to have had some time to appreciate, Daniel, Janelle, Belinda, and all the rest that who has shared today, because it's really a rich and worthwhile set of narratives that we have heard. And we thank you, Erika, for the wonderful work. You're the one who put this in motion and set up the conditions for it to happen. So thank you, everyone. I hope that we keep conversing about the pandemic, because the human side, what you have been providing, is what we don't listen and we don't hear about enough, really. And it really changes all our minds about how people are affected and what needs to be done, really. So thank you. And, I hope to see you in the Institute in the future and to continue this. This is actually part of an archive. We've been archiving narratives of the pandemic from the beginning. So this will contribute to the Stony Brook archive of the pandemic, which is mostly data. But thanks to you and thanks to us, I guess, at the Institute, we're contributing the narratives. We really change the data. They give voice to what the data cannot tell. So thank you, and have a great time and a great day. And that was wonderful, Erika, really outstanding.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. And by the way, to everybody who just ended up, wanting to read, wanting to be in the, just thank you for being so vulnerable, so sort of in such good spirits. I really appreciated that. And, to anybody who didn't get a chance to share their stories, please be part of the project. Community members can come once or twice to tell a particular story that needs to be told. We'll be having a new group of students coming in, and they'll be expected to come every week. But we really want this to grow and want this to be part of it. And we feel so lucky to be working with Adriana and the Institute. And, we've found a good home.
Do we have a meeting time already for next semester?
Okay, so the meeting time is going to be, and let's see, Milady or Madison, somebody, can you put it in the chat? It's going to be 7 to 9. Because when we were talking to Heather, a lot of the nurses now on Long Island are working in New York City. So we wanted to have it late enough so when they come back from work, they can be part of it. And the idea is to really focus on the people who were the kind of invisible first responders, like Carla, the story of working in a fast food place. We had a student who couldn't be here from Stony Brook who had to get a job spraying dangerous buildings. But you've all just seen and experienced so much. So.
Well, thank you. And I think in future events, we have to reserve some time to appreciate the wonderful work, like, Danielle, Janelle, and Belinda put a lot of work on those stories, and people want to appreciate that because you really made a difference today. So it would have been great to listen to some appreciations, but you can send them a message or an email about how you were moved, touched, or enter in conversation with them. So thank you, everyone, and hopefully we'll see you again.
All right.
Yeah, thank you.
Good night.